All right, live from the wasteland. This is Freedom Phil here in the survival pod. Just got back a while ago from a hike, 4 or so miles. Me and the dog, middle of nowhere. And sometimes when I have a good experience like that, I think to myself, why the hell would anybody ever want to go to work ever again? Why would you want to be a contributing part of society? And I'll get into this. Yeah, and by the way, Freedom Phil, like to subscribe, turn up the video speed. And why do I always say that? Because, well, you can be watching videos faster. Why would you want to do that? Well, why wouldn't you? It's common sense, man. And it's not a channel for children. I talk about all sorts of weird, crazy things. I swear, I cuss, I do a lot of things. And I am not your digital nanny. So, hey, if you're just trying to farm out your parental abilities to screen, you're a shitty parent. Some of my followers are robots and retards. You got a lot of clankers. I'd say 95% or more of the people that are absolutely sub-IQ retards. But there's a handful of you that actually know how to have a real conversation. And if you're a subscriber, I don't mind having a conversation here and there, as long as you're on topic. And if not, maybe I'll get in timeout. Maybe I'll block you if you're a douche. So I'm just saying, I got standards. This is my sphere of oblivion, and I'll rule it as I please. Freedom Phil, let's get into it. So I got up this morning. I should have got up even earlier. You know, the best time to hike out in the wasteland, especially during winter, or probably any time to be honest, is right as the sun's barely up. Like you can tell that there's just barely any light out there. You know, you get ready, you get what you need, and you just go out and you go hiking. And me and the doggo started hiking, hiked up the hill. And he was pretty cool actually for a while there, like 3/4 of it. By the end of it, last mile, he was kind of dragging balls. And I'm just like, dude, really? Like, once he knows where he's going, like he's peed here or there, and he's walked it. He's like, oh yeah, I remember these scents. Okay, I know where we're going. But we're walking. I walked up this road about 3, 4, 5 blocks or so. I don't even know how far. And it leads up to the old decommissioned road highway. I think it was a highway based on some of the things I've read around here. And basically, before there was the county highway out here that was actually the U.S. highway at one point, and then the interstate that's way across the river, across the way before they built that, you had roads, and they had to start out with something. So the old stagecoach roads, which, you know, at once upon a time were probably just the best Indian trail around. So, you know, the highlands this way, because before we had giant ass machines that carve out the world, it was a lot of work if you wanted to build a hole through a hillside. So they took the easiest routes they could find. So I'm guessing where I was going through was part of the original stagecoach roads, and then they became paved roads probably back in the 20s or 30s. And for a while there, that was what we had until better machines came along and you built straighter roads. You see this with railroad as well on a regular basis. You see some of these zigzaggy crap that they did, and you're like, why did they do that? Because that was the first one. That's what they had. And once they got the machines in there, they were able to do better things, way better. So it's not uncommon. And it's funny when you get out to some of these places, you'll be walking along a place and you realize you look at just the fact that there's not really much action. Like some places the road was still used as in-betweens. Like roads that were accessed by this road once upon a time are now accessing the county road right down here, you know, state highway or whatever it is. And then the old roads used to come up from that road all the way down to the river. But the places in between, like where some of the ravines were, I shouldn't say ravines, but like, you know how there's washes out in the wasteland. They tear out the culverts, and there's word around that they actually did this to screw over the local rancher that has cattle out here. There's been some contentions about that because they're like, you're not supposed to have cattle. And he's like, we've been ranching this land for God knows how long. We've been paying our dues since the beginning of time. But that's a whole side story. So there's some people that say part of it was decommissioned because they had the new road. Other people have said the old road basically was destroyed to screw up the rancher. And what they did was they tear out the culverts or the concrete structures. That way the road wasn't usable. Either way, they built little bypasses by it. When they did it, they tore out those pieces, but then part of it was they probably just didn't want to take care of the road anymore either. You know, they didn't want to pave it. They didn't want to do anything, but they didn't see any point to it. So you have these little dig outs on the sides where you could take like a side-by-side. Definitely you could motorcycle the whole thing. Might be a little work in a few spots, but you could motorcycle the whole thing. Dirt bike, you know. Side by side, there's a couple places that I could say would be a pain in the ass, but possible if you put your mind to it. So yeah, I'm sitting there going through there. I'm walking, and eventually I get to where I'm seeing some things that I saw a few years ago when I walked some of it way back then. And I'm like, I know this. I've been here before. And I go walking, and then I go up this area. I wanted to see if the old guy that was camped out, there on the road, off the road, where they dug out one of the areas where the culverts was. And he's still there, I said, when I was over at my river spot, I'd see him every once in a while coming out. And people are like, why'd you leave the river spot? Well, part of it was the farmer hasn't rebuilt the farmer dam yet, and I don't know when he will. The other thing is that really, how much water do I really use for domestic uses? I mean, most of it I find some way to recycle it to a certain degree. And some of the other stuff is like, I don't, as far as bathing, I only use about a third to a half a gallon tops when I bathe. And I only do that every day or two or so. And, like when your body feels like, okay, let's do it. So really, when I go back into town, I generally have probably, I don't know, 15 to 20 extra gallons of water that I'm packing back into the van. That's not including all the empties. And I don't drink a ton of water, and I don't use a ton of water. So I'm just like, what if I use like a gallon and a half a day? Maybe not even that. Some days, like if I drink, I use more water. But so I picked this wasteland spot up here on the hills because I pick up more channels. But when I went walking up there, when I first got here, I went walking up the road to see if there was a better camp spot. And the only reason I settled on this one is because it's got a really kick-ass view of the whole city and a lot of other things. I kind of wanted to be up near the top, and I got up there and I looked at the crossroad. I could see in the kind of, wash valley. I'm like, that's the old highway. And instantly I was interested. So occasionally, like the other day, we went walking the other direction, got to this big area, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking around at it, and I'm like, there isn't the usual bunch of broken glass. There's some beer bottles left over. Like somebody, from where I'm sitting, you could literally drive a vehicle over there, like definitely a side by side to where I was hanging out, looking around, and I'm just thinking, it just feels magical. I'm in a place that it feels like ghostly magical, like you can almost feel like the past. And it's hard to explain that. But like you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, this is a place that people built. It existed. Just like when you go through old ruins, people lived here and did things. And I always want to know the history of all that. Now, what does this have to do with the thing I said initially, like with the whole working and, like jobs versus actually going out? It's really hard sell to tell somebody like myself. Like I happen to like driving truck, but there are times I look at the world and think, you want me to pay 35 to 45% of my income to taxes, and then on top of that, sales taxes, gas taxes, and everything the fuck else. And if they live in a state with income taxes, there's the other thing there too. Also, I can, keep society going. And the only reason I do as well as I do is I can live off almost nothing. I can live off almost fucking nothing. Like $200 to $300 a month. I'm happy. Like I've come to view my house up in the Rocky Mountain State. It's just a problem. That's how I view it. And the reason I look at it that way is because it doesn't fit me. This fits me. Middle of nowhere, get up in the morning before the sun comes up, go hiking, go down. If I feel like washing myself, if there's a creek or a river, just go down there and wash myself. Gather some water a little higher up on the river than that. No problems, no issues, no fucking issues. That's the thing. And then I look back at society. And society is literally, other than a handful of good people, like, you got your food banks, you got some of the people that work at the stores, they're keeping society going. They're good people. But most of the time, society, when I look at people, and this is actually a small percentage, like the 2% of people out there that quite literally Go and fuck shit up. Like the people that go out there, instead of shooting cans and plastic bottles, they're shooting glass because they're fucking assholes. And they're leaving a mess for everybody. I gotta understand glass if you were shooting in a place where it'd be easy to clean up. But no, they just go and break shit. They ruin shit. They dump garbage. They fucking make noise. They get pissed off. They cause fucking problems for people. And then I look at our tax system and it's just like, you want me to go to work to pay for all this bullshit? You want to tell these kids, oh, hey, son, you want to go and work a fucking steady job for X amount of years? And the answer is fucking no. Like I like driving truck, but that's because I like driving truck. And even that, where it's all like I went to companies and some of them have the attitude of, where do you live? Well, I own property over here, this place up there, but I go there every once in a blue moon to visit. Well, we have to have a location. I'm like, you can have a post office box. Here's the post office box. I show up and do my job. And that's another thing. Being a van lifer, I'll be real about it. There's some discrimination that happens with you. If you want to work a regular job, people have this attitude when they see your vehicle and they're like, oh, that doesn't look right for our blah, blah. I'm like, fuck you. You know, like, that's one of the things about society that I have a problem with. See, you can have, if you're a minimalist and you're like cool with like just gardening or fishing or hiking or the basics, you know, like the things that come from you, crafts work, like you got like your local radio shows you listen to and maybe some airwave TV. Life is fucking tits. Then you go back to society and what do you find? A bunch of people trying to like puppeteer you anally. Like instead of the fingers, you know, they stick that big jagged thumb up there. And they want to tell you exactly how you can do, how you can live, what you can wear, what you can be. And like, if you don't play their stupid little high school, middle school fucking game, because it never ends for most of those people. They never got out of that middle schooler mindset. What clothes do you wear? What games do you have? What you ride the bus? I have a car. And they do that shit all through high school, then ends up going into university, your 20s, their 30s, is one fashion trend after another. And the greatest fun part for these people is generally controlling how you're going to live your life. And that's where it gets on my nerves when I think about all the cool places I used to go out into the outlands, up in the Northwest that used to exist. And now a lot of them are blocked off or whatnot because, well, there were a lot of van lifers, and they're not really van lifers, they're bums in RVs. And they're like, well, what's the difference? A van lifer is the type of person who really loves going out there and being in the land, on the land, just enjoying life. Bums in RVs are literally people that would rent that little apartment, that little studio, but they can't afford it. Or they could afford it, but then they couldn't afford their drugs. Or they couldn't afford, like, they hit the RV because the RV is pretty, you know, honestly, a lot of RVs are pretty nice. It's a quality enough life. But then when their RV has a problem and it breaks down or they abandon it somewhere, or like a trailer, they just dump it somewhere, or they cook meth in it, or they're out of their fucking minds. Trust me, those were the people back in the day that used to live in the little bungalow households. So van lifers get lumped in with those people because people just see the vehicle, not the individual. And then you got to deal with all the nonsense of people leaving trash out in the middle of nowhere. So when I get out to the middle of goddamn nowhere, like really places that nobody drives, and I'm walking some forgotten road, and you just see the complete absence of modern trash, and you think, yeah, that's what happens when you don't have a bunch of fucking humans around. Like that one spot over on yonder, this way the heck out there. I could probably get my van to it. I mean, I don't know if there's any real reason to go there, but the idea that I'd be someplace and it's completely secluded. That's nice. That's nice. Of course, that part of the decommissioned highway, you know, fuck, there's one part of it where there's a chunk of it missing. You know, like if you stay over on this side, so it's good for side-by-sides and, you know, motorcycles and four-wheelers, but I don't know if I'd recommend anybody driving on it. Like a Jeep would be fine. But yeah, no, I just had a really good morning. And then you come back and look at all the societal, you know, usual fraud and nonsense going on. And you're just like, yep, be a contributing part of America. Also, they can take your money and piss it away. You know, I'm just saying, make a better argument for these young people to go out and work, because I just had a blast this morning. You know, given the choice between doing that for the rest of my life and, you know, having half of my money taken by the government. Just saying. Freedom Fail, like, subscribe, take it easy.